Welcome back to the Culture Cafe, episode 36. I'm Curtis, as per usual.
Owen.
I'm joined by my co-host, yes, Owen. And a third guest today, Joel Jammal. How are you going, Joel?
Yeah, good, very good. Pleasure to be here. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good, thanks.
Very good.
How about you, Owen? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to have another chat with Joel. It's a couple of days ago, we recorded episode 35. We had a great conversation. And this time, as suggested by Joel, we're going to unpack the US elections. A little bit of a hype-up video, if you will.
Very timely. We're about a week out or something, I think.
A couple of days.
Yeah,
on the 3rd of November.
Huge. So, Joel, do you want to talk a little bit at all about like how we got here, or like any of your sort of platform and stuff that you like to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. You mean in terms of the US election?
Or just like more generally, like your sort of commentary online and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So it's been a very fascinating last few months, really. You know, I started sort of paying attention to politics not so long ago. Actually, I guess it's a little bit of time to people like our age. 5 years ago, after I finished school, I sort of picked up on US politics. I ran into some politics in the US, and I started looking into what was going on in the US with, you know, a lot of the stuff happening on the progressive side, and I became a progressive for about a year and a half. And then it didn't take long before I started to realize that the progressives were onto something, and they were railing against, you know, the mainstream media and this and that, you know, the usual stuff. And I was basically in a situation where I thought, okay, I think there's something here. This is really interesting. So I sort of took a hobby to it. And it wasn't so long until I sort of realized that I think I might be wrong on this. You know, I felt devastated when Bernie Sanders lost the nomination to Hillary Clinton in 2016. And I also felt just as devastated when Donald Trump won. And I think it was November 11th, 2016. And so in mid-2017, I had a bit of a red pill moment where I ran across some conservative videos. One was from Ben Shapiro, debating Cenk Uygur, and another was from Milo Yiannopoulos, who was debating a feminist about how feminism has sort of degraded, and it's not about equality anymore. It's about man hating, and women are better rather than equality. And I thought that was a real changing moment for me. And ever since then, I sort of became more outspoken. I mean, you can still go back to my Facebook profile back to 2016. I was posting Young Turk stuff. It's all there, all the progressive stuff. So, I mean, it's certainly been a long time coming, and more recently I've been speaking out a lot more. I recently lost my job in property development due to the coronavirus response, not the coronavirus itself. The government chose to lock down, and as a result, there are consequences, and 1 million people lost their job. Is a weekly show which I do with Riccardo, who's the head of the Australia One political party. But I'm always open to a number of different parties. There are good players in all the parties.
Lovely. Love that balance. Also, Thin Ice, very nice name.
Yeah, well, I thought Conversations on Thin Ice. I couldn't find a more appropriate. I was tossing up between that name and Eyebrow Raising Conversations. I wasn't sure which one to go with.
I think you made the right choice.
Chosen the right one. Yeah, definitely the right choice.
Yeah, plenty of material here.
So, Joel, tell us why this election. So, for those listening right now, you know, here at the Culture Cafe, we're a little bit loose. Kind of structure isn't our main thing. But for this episode, we are looking to cover how the US elections work, what the parties involved are, who the leaders involved are, a little bit of history about each of the leaders, and what each of the leaders is promising. Hopefully we get around to all those topics. But first, Joel, I'd love to just get your opinion on why this election is so important and why it feels like the world is watching more than ever.
Well, the stakes have never been higher. We're in a situation where the world is watching what happened this year, and if you've been living under a rock, this has been a crazy year, an absolutely crazy year. I mean, we started I just finished making a montage for CPAC Australia. It might actually open the CPAC conference, and I'm hopefully releasing it relatively soon, so everyone can sort of see. It summarizes all the events this year that have gone place. taken place. And I follow geopolitics all over the world: the UK, Australia, Canada, everywhere, Africa and Asia. And look, it's been a crazy year, and because the stakes have not been so high, the consequences of the most powerful nation in the world due to its military and economy, the consequences of that will have rippling effects. I mean, Australia is a relatively small country. We last year crossed 25 million people. America is like 330 million people. That's a lot of people. And
massive.
Their economy was completely brought to its knees, like 33% every quarter, because of what happened with the coronavirus. I mean, the amount of businesses that will never come back over there is phenomenal. And, a lot of people are saying there's going to be a V-shaped recovery from that. I don't know. We'll see. The national debt that they've taken on is phenomenal. But why is this election so important? Well, we're having have you guys ever heard of Thucydides' trap before?
No.
I've heard the term, but
you
I'm not
have.
sure what it means.
It's from a philosopher called Thucydides, and he's and like all good Greek philosophers, he has a great name. And the thing with Thucydides, was what happened was he came up with this. He noticed something looking at history, and let me know if you can't hear me properly, guys. He came up with this sort of history, this rule. So I can't remember what the numbers are. It was something like 16 out of 20 times that this has happened, it's led to war. So throughout history, we see a rising superpower come up against the existing superpower. For example, Persia and Greece, for example. But everyone's seen 300. Persia was the existing power at the time. Greece was the rising superpower, and it led to war. Well, in the last few in history, I think it's something like 16 out of the 21 different times that's happened, where that transition's happened, they've had war. So now we're in a world, and this is particularly important to Australia. Right now we're in a world where Australia is heavily, our strongest trading partner is China, and China is rising quite a lot. I mean, their economy is getting very strong, and through their Belt and Road Initiative around the world, it's concerning. It is concerning. So we're in a situation where that's on the ballot. Isn't that strange? Because we can't vote on that, but we're going to cop the consequences anyway. And another one is censorship. Both of our channels might be gone if Trump loses this election. That's pretty heavy. I mean, we've already seen the power of big tech. So
sorry, just to cut in.
Yeah, sure.
Just on that censorship, how would that? You're suggesting that should Trump lose this election and Biden takes power, any sort of media, such as your channel, such as our channel, because we're discussing it now, the whole election process, is at risk of being taken down. Why is that, and how would that happen?
Well, one thing that people need to understand, and it's not many people have been paying attention to this, but over the last few years, there has been heavy censorship of people from the left and the right, and particularly on the ends of the spectrum. Now, if they're inciting violence, then it's like, okay, they should be taken off. That's a law you can't break. You can't do that. But what's happening is they're taking radical views, conspiracy theorists on the right, maybe whatever on the far left, whatever is considered far left, and they're censoring and they're slowly cutting away at these people on the fringes. And we're in a situation now where the people on the fringes are being banned completely. Now, the problem with the social media sites, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, is the problem with them. They have it both ways. So if I go on their platform and say, I don't know, George W. Bush did X, Y, and Z, and it's a complete lie, they are not held accountable, even though they could be considered a publisher.
Yeah, they're facilitating that.
Exactly. Logical. If I go on Twitter and I say that a man is not a woman, I will get banned. That's a problem. That is a problem.
Okay.
Because what it implies is that the the rule that they've put forward is not actually, it's not being respectful. I'm butchering the response. One person who's explained this very well is Tim Pool. He sat down with the CEO of Twitter on a podcast recently. Actually, this was mid last year, and he did a phenomenal job at this. And he explained to one of the executives and Jack Dorsey, the CEO, why their rules are bent against conservatives. And it was a very fascinating listen. But look, in summary, it's not looking good, guys. It's not looking good at all. Section 230 is the section of their legislation that they govern with that sort of protects the US. So it protects these big tech companies, and it needs some significant reform because that's the thing that's sort of stopping people.
All right. Just interestingly on that, because that's a really interesting point we touched on. It's relevant to one of our earlier episodes on social media. Do you think there's utility perhaps in the platform censoring things that are independently verified as false, because misinformation is rife these days, rather than ideological issues, but those that are false? Do you think there's benefits in censorship of that, or is there censorship of any kind?
Look, if it's breaking existing laws in the books, obviously it should be banned. So if it's something like, I don't know, what do you got? Look, incitement of violence is a really easy one. Especially if it's using specifics, like I'm going to go to this person's house and kill them with this weapon or whatever at this time, at this date, or whatever. If it's that specific, it's like, okay, you got to pull that down. If it's like a video, like what we saw with the New Zealand mosque massacre of the Muslims there, that's something that should obviously be pulled down. It's violence. You shouldn't all be looking at that. Now, when it comes to elections and whether an ad should be run, I think it should be. I think you got to trust people to sort of work it out, because the truth does usually come out in the end. And if people find out they've been lied to after the fact, they will get, let's call it, revenge politically, in terms of they'll vote the person out. And that's how our system relies. But what we can't have is a situation where you have these arbiters of truth who are not elected by anyone, who can't be removed, and they're basically stopping the news from getting out. And we saw that this week with this last 2 weeks with Hunter Biden and the laptop from hell that's been sort of giving him and the Joe Biden campaign sort of grief, because all this information has been coming out and it's been censored. The New York Post is an establishment newspaper. It's been around. It was started by one of the founders of the Constitution or something, and it's been around for a couple hundred years. And yet, that's something that was censored. It's a problem.
Okay, so the one thing, and we will move on from censorship soon to get into the actual meat of the election. However, one thing, in my opinion, when it comes to censorship, and Curtis touched on it there about false information, false news, fake news. I think that there definitely should be some censorship when there's false news being spread that is going to harm someone. And yes, the truth usually does come out, and when people realize they've been lied to, there's a reaction and there's consequences from that. However, a lot of the time people are acting on this false news before it's been verified or before the truth comes out, and that can be damaging. So perhaps it is a tough one, because there should be freedom to say what you want to say on social media, so long as it's not breaking any laws such as inciting violence. But where do we draw the line? You're absolutely right, Joel, when you say that a line needs to be drawn. I think it's going to take a long time for people to figure out where that line lies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a few solutions. Some people have suggested a Internet Bill of Rights, one ensuring, the right to free speech, stuff like that, and thought and expression. But I don't know. But the point is, we do need to have the discussion on it. We know these companies can swing elections. In 2016, anywhere from 2.6 to 10.4 million votes were swung from Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump. That is, you can look this up. You can look this up, and that's not a conspiracy. If you go to, if you look up Ted Cruz talking with Dr. Robert Epstein, who testified before Congress in 2018 and 2019, not so long ago, you will find a video of him detailing this evidence and how they do it. For example, and cut me off, guys, I'll just run with this. For example, so in America, they don't have compulsory voting. Now, Facebook, for example, what they were doing, what we can see the ability for them to do, and I think Dr. Epstein touched on this, is they can send you out notifications to remind you to go and vote. Now, that matters over there because it's not compulsory voting. Now, if they do that to the right people, then that's not going to be good for the Republicans or the Democrats if they choose a side. Another one is with Google. Another one is with Google. The suggestions bar that pops down. If you started typing Hillary, it said all positive things like Hillary, first female president. Hillary will win. Hillary this. Hillary that. With Trump, it was completely different. And you can see this on Twitter. You can go and do this right now. Right now, I promise you it'll work. At least when we're filming this. If you type in racist into the search bar for Twitter, I'm going to go and check it right now. Who is the person that pops up first?
Okay, I'm logging onto Twitter right now.
Yeah, test it. It's a real life test. Your jaw's going to drop. It's pretty crazy. And it just makes you think, who did that?
I've got racist Karen.
So did you just type racist? And who else have you got?
Racist Asian and racist Asiatique. Mona Chalabi, anti-racist. Tommy X Trump is a racist. Dennis Kyoko.
Have you searched accounts?
Okay, maybe I need to do that. I've just typed into the search bar.
Yeah, if you search racist and you search people, maybe I should have been more specific.
Okay.
Who's the
racist
first?
People?
Yeah, no, if you search racist and you go to the people tab on Twitter, what do you get?
I'm trying to, I must be on the wrong thing. I'm on Twitter now into the search bar. I'm not getting.
Your Twitter's crashed.
Oh, I need to go to explore, don't I? That's how it works. I'm not all over my Twitter.
So what we're getting at, Joel, is that these accounts these platforms tend to be maligned against conservative movements.
Exactly. I mean, the point I was making was Donald Trump pops up first if you look at it. And
I was expecting him to pop up. Yeah,
and they do. And I just did it there as a live example. And these big tech organizations, they are very dangerous, and we need to keep an eye on them. And we should be. I mean, we're in the off season now, guys, in Australia. In terms of the federal election, we should be resolving this now, not close to an election, so we make it partisan.
It seems quite just jarringly absent from international debate. Like, this is arguably the top three, like most pressing, very seldomly discussed and debated.
Absolutely.
Some sort of international forum seems pretty important. But anyway, maybe we should move on to the election, though. I think I'd love to pick your brain about that.
Yeah, let's do
get
it.
into the
Absolutely.
meat and potatoes of it.
Okay, so let's get into the election then. First up is, because I know, well, for myself anyway, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners, the US elections are a little bit different to the Australian elections, or rather a lot different to the Australian elections. There's a whole lot more to it. And a lot of the time it seems like a sports game in its own right. So on a very basic level, Joel, how do the US elections work? I know we've got college votes and you have to win the states, but give us a quick rundown.
Yeah, sure. So look, the beginning state of first thing you've got to recognize is the different chambers of government. So you've got Congress, they've got a House of Representatives in Congress, and they've got the Senate in Congress. Then so that's the first sort of branch of government. Then the next one is the judiciary, which is the judges and all that, and you've got the Supreme Court at the top of that. And recently we had Amy Coney Barrett, who was elected. There's 9 judges on that court, and then you've got the president. Then you got the House, the presidency. Now, what these elections are, every 4 years we have an election for Congress, but also for the president. And it's actually every 2 years for Congress, actually. So you've got some people in Congress, they will be up for election in 2 years, and some won't be there. They'll come in another 2 years. So it's very similar to our senators. For example, you guys are in where are you guys based again? Melbourne. So you've got some senators who were up for election last year in 2019, but they won't be up for election until in 6 years after that. However, at the next at the next federal election, because there's a federal election in between that 6 years. They're in 3 years, so some will be up for election, some won't. So in this particular election, you've got the House of Representatives. They sort of they control the purse, basically. The head of that right now is the Democrats. They have the most numbers there, and they've got Nancy Pelosi, she's the lady that ripped up Trump's speech at the State of the Union speech, the most recent one he did, and she sort of controls the purse of the government.
Okay.
Then there's the Senate. The Senate is where there's a bunch of different seats that are also up for election this time around. And the Senate has a very important job to approve a lot of the things from the House, very similar to our Senate here. And then obviously you've got the presidency. Now, it's the presidency which is probably the one people don't quite understand a lot because of this thing called the Electoral College. So when the founders of the Constitution were sort of working out the best way to elect someone, they were trying to work out, okay, how can we do this so that, they didn't like democracy in itself from other countries because it always failed. They described democracy as being two wolves and a sheep discussing what's for dinner. So, obviously they didn't want a situation where the majority would clamp down on the minority. Like if the majority was 51% and the minority was 49%, they didn't want a situation where the majority could do whatever the hell they wanted with the minority. So, so what they decided to do was they created this thing called the Electoral College, where there's 50 states in America. And what they decided to do was give each state a certain amount of electoral votes. And the votes can only be won once. For example, you've got California, which is a very relatively large state in terms of population. Incredible. What is it, like over 30 million people there? It's larger than Australia in population. They have 50.
Crazy.
Exactly. They have 55 electoral college votes. And then you've got a state right next to it, like Nevada, and that's got 5 electoral votes. So it's tiny. They've got 6 votes. So the reason why they created this was because if you win California, you can only win it once, if you know what I mean. So you need 51%, you need 50% of the vote plus 1 vote to win the election, right? In California to get those votes. You can only win that once. So if you get 4 million more votes, which is what Hillary Clinton did in California, it doesn't really matter in California because you've already won it. Whereas you need to work on the other states. So the Electoral College, what it forces people to do is to campaign in other states. So the magic number that people need to win in the 50 states, once you add all of these numbers, you need to win enough states to reach the 270 Electoral College vote mark. That's sort of making sense. And
so I'll just cut in quick just so people who are listening can keep up.
Yeah, sure.
We have our 50 states, and in each state there is a college vote.
Yeah, a certain number of college votes allotted to state dependent on our population, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm actually checking. Yeah. I'm actually checking that detail. I'm actually got to double check that.
And so the office of whoever's going to become the next president is decided by winning that 270 vote mark, or winning a.
So for example, Trump won however many states. If you win the right states, then you can get enough electoral college votes. The Republicans won more states the last election. Because they won a lot more little states. Whereas the Democrats, they focus on predominantly the big hubs where the population are. They don't focus on rural America where there's less population, less votes. And can you sort of see how that protects the minorities, the minority states? And
you can't just appeal to the majority and win the election. You have to push out to all areas of the country and get those minority states. Okay, so that's sounding like a pretty good system for what we've heard so far.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Democracy is the worst system. Democracy is a bad system, but it's the best of the crappy systems. I'll put it that way. All the other ones, they don't really work. And in this particular case, it's not called a democracy over there. It's a constitutional republic over there. They elect representatives who do it. If it was a pure democracy, it wouldn't end up so well. I'll put it that way. It'd end up like like France or something, French Revolution sort of stuff.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we've got our big states, our small states, and you have to win the votes within those states, and you can't just appeal to the majority. What happens next? You need to get those 270 to win, right?
That's right.
Right. So the politicians go out, they campaign, they spend all of this money, and you see some of the videos online. The campaigns are insane. I saw one in Florida with a train of golf carts going down the road playing music, and it looked like a football rally or something like that. I mean, it's like a sport over there. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And surely more so as well, more now than ever. I feel like the level of polarity we see now is just getting to another level, I feel like, in current times. I feel like it'd become more adversarial in nature, the competition.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So we move on from winning the 270 votes. What happens next?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in terms of winning the 270 votes, you basically got a situation where, some states are safe seats and some states are not safe seats. So California, as I
swing states, right?
Yeah, that's right. We call them swing states. So it's just like Australia, how we've got swing seats, how we've got, seats like inner Melbourne that go green, or, they're always red, or, for Labor, or, more the progressive side. Where with California, for example, as I said, Hillary Clinton, she won 4 million votes, excess votes over there, more than she needed. Yet Donald Trump won 1 million more votes than her across, spread across the rest of America. So he spent more time campaigning in the states that sort of mattered. But the excess votes don't help you, win more. So with these swing states, you've got states like California, which are solid blue states, Democrat states, the progressive states, and then you've also got Donald Trump, who is he's got his safe red states. Texas is considered as a safe red. However, a lot of people have been saying it's getting closer to becoming a purple state.
Right.
So like a swing state.
Well, I mean, you've got Austin, which is actually a really progressive city right in the heart of Texas.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So
so we've got the two. Well, I guess we've got two parties, right? I don't know if we have. It's not as diverse as we have it here in Australia. Is it? I think it's a two-party preferential system. So who do we have competing for these electoral college votes?
Yeah, sure. So we have who do we have competing? We have Donald Trump for the Republican ticket. He was nominated by the Republican ticket, and that's a process in itself. I can explain. And then you've got Hillary Clinton. It's not 2016. We got Joe Biden. Look, trust me, Joe Biden. We're going to forget about who he was in a year from now. You've got Joe. You've got Joe Biden. You've got Joe. I'm not holding back. You've got Joe Biden. Who's been nominated as the Democratic nominee, and that was a very fascinating primary he had with. There was over 20. There was like 30 different candidates for the Democrat side,
right?
And then you've got all the different little minor parties. So you've got Joe Jorgensen, who's the Libertarian Party. That's right, they have libertarians over there. And then you've also got a Greens candidate. I'm not sure who's running on that ticket. And I think you've got one other independent candidate. But that's pretty much it. But did you guys want me to explain the primary process?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
going
sure.
to say we were just talking about the swing states and the safe states,
Mm,
and before we jumped into who the parties are involved.
mm.
And yes, if you could explain the primaries and also just link it back to where we were at in that whole election process, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So the
Cool.
so the U.S. election year, it's very long. So as I said before, there's if we're talking just the presidential election, they have 4 year terms. You know, in Australia we have 3 year terms for our government. Over there, the president is there for 4 years, and he's pretty much his presidential run. It pretty much started early last year. He was holding rallies and all that, and that's normal. That's totally normal. That's the sort of thing President Obama was doing. So it typically takes like 2 years, maybe 1.5 years minimum. And what you have is you have a bunch of the Republicans, because obviously over there you can see there's the two major parties, Republicans and Democrats. Over there you've got a massive amount of Democrats that were running this election cycle. We had like 30 of them. There were so many of them. And the debates were so big that they had to split them over 2 nights, where you had like 10 on a stage each. And they had to exclude some people from debating because, you know, by using polling results, because there were so many of them. Yeah, it was actually pretty crazy. So yeah, you had that happening on the Democrat side, and you know you had all the Republicans sort of consolidate under Trump. There was maybe one or two. Here we had a very fascinating situation where we had all the debates. There were a number of different debates, and slowly over time, those debates, you know, the ratings they got, the amount of people tuning into them actually really declined. Now, originally, it started off as anyone's game. Everyone sort of had their moment in the light. We had Kamala Harris, she's now the vice presidential nominee for the Democrats, but she was trying to be president before. She attacked Joe Biden, which was hilarious in one of these debates. You had a bunch of these different people, and basically they were all fighting. At one point, you almost had Bernie Sanders actually get the nomination, but when the primaries. Bernie,
he was looking good for some time there. He was looking quite healthy.
He won Nevada, and it was looking very, very scary for the establishment Democrats, because you've got progressives and you've got establishment, you know, crony Democrats, and it was looking very scary at the time. And you know, I wasn't scared, but it was looking scary for the establishment. So they freaked out. And what happened was there's this thing called Super Tuesday, because you have the 50 states to try and get these people the nomineeship, basically. So they have to win a certain amount of delegates. There's thousands of delegates, and each state they go to, they get a certain amount of delegates based on, I think, the population. And only Democrats can vote in these primaries in most states. So what happened was they would campaign around America. They'd try and get these delegates and go from there. Now what happened was Bernie won one of these overwhelmingly, like Nevada, and there were a bunch of different states he was winning, and he was ahead, and it looked like he was going to take it. And then out of nowhere, there's this thing called Super Tuesday where there were about, I can't remember how many states, but there were like eight or more different states that they did on this Tuesday, where all these people went out and did this primary. And what happened was just the weekend before, all of the establishment Democrats, they all pulled out of the race so that all their votes would channel to Joe Biden, and they endorsed Joe Biden. And then what happened? Yeah, and also, what's her name? One of the progressive candidates, you probably won't know who she is. One of the progressive candidates, Elizabeth Warren, the one that claimed to be American Indian, and she's 1,024th American Indian. She didn't drop out. And so she was taking votes away from Bernie. So what ended up happening was you had exactly. Yeah, okay. So you had, and you know, this came up in one of the debates. Donald Trump said it, and you know, so you had Bernie, you had her, and then you had Joe Biden, all in these primaries with, you know, one other person who didn't get many votes at all, Tulsi Gabbard. She won a delegate, and that was it. That was the moment. That was the lynching that sort of really took his campaign out. And I think he would have taken it. He was filling up stadiums. But anyway, so as a result, all of this sort of happened. Bernie sort of stayed in for a bit, and then he never won it. And then we're in a situation where they keep fighting, and then when they get to the primary finish, that is when they have their conferences, their big conferences. So they call it a Democratic National Convention, and then the Republicans also have their convention as well, where they all come out and they all do a big, hoo-ha, and it's supposed to be a big thing where they say, we're going to make him the nominee and this and that, and all the delegates cast their votes. And that happened this year, and the Democrats had a terrible conference. It was shocking. If you look it up, it's very cringeworthy. And so that was sort of when they nominated someone. That's meant to be the peak of polling for them. And then after that they begin their presidential run properly against each other, the Republican and the Democrat, and that's when we've been seeing all the debates, and that sort of brings us up to where we are now.
Yeah. So we have this, in summary, the primaries. So you have your Republicans and you have your Democrats, which I think most people outside of the US understand that pretty confidently as the two major parties.
Yep.
And the primaries are essentially within these two parties where the leader is essentially chosen. And we had, for example, as you were saying, in the Democrats, around 30 people pushing for that position. And what happened was you had Bernie Sanders, who everyone's heard of, and he was taken out basically because the establishment Democrats came together and said, we can't have Bernie win this thing. Let's throw it all in and let's put Joe at the front. And we saw Joe come through, take the win. So Joe won the primaries. And now, as you said, we're up to where we are, which is Trump versus Biden, head to head with their vice presidents. So they're the parties involved. We have Trump with the Republicans and we have Joe Biden with the Democrats. And the vice president, do you want to just spend a minute or two talking about the role that the vice president plays in these parties and in the election?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the
running mate, I believe they're called as well.
Speak specifically to these characters or what their role is generically?
Let's talk about what the role is generically, because the next question is talking about who the leaders are, and in that we can talk about this year's characters.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So their role. You want to pick a good presidential candidate that's not going to draw too much attention from the presidential candidate, but one that usually will secure a state. Now remember that, because we're going to come back to the definition later. So you want someone that's going to be invigorating, someone that can be sort of not so invigorating that they take attention away, but someone that will do the job. And the vice president has a very important role as the nominee to basically campaign as well. And look, the Republicans and the Democrats both play by that rule generally. And, the vice president has a very important role in the government. If anything were to happen to the president, he would be the next one, or she would be the next one that would take up the mantle. And, and they've got a very important role in the administration.
Okay. So that's the vice president and that's the role. So let's talk about this year's candidates and the vice presidents and presidents this year.
All right, this is where the real fun starts. Okay,
this is going to get interesting.
Yeah, this will get interesting. So let's start with the Democratic nominee as the vice president. Her name is Kamala Harris. Her name is Kamala Harris. The reason they sort of picked her was because they wanted to get the black vote. Just one problem. She's not black. She's actually not black. She has a black complexion, but she's actually Jamaican and Indian, but that counts as black for them. So they picked her. She's from California.
Yep.
As I said before, California is a stronghold blue state. And, why would you pick someone to secure a state that's already secured? As per the definition before, so now you see why I said that. So there's that.
That's interesting, yeah.
Exactly. So, and on top of that, she dropped out of the primary race to become president just before California because she was polling so low. She was polling at less than 9% in her own state. That's ridiculously bad, and so she dropped out to avoid the embarrassment. I've got a bunch of other things. some of these things, I don't chuck them in because I'm holding it against her. I'm chucking it in because progressives hate her. They really do. She used to be a prosecutor, and she prosecuted her office when she was the prosecutor. They prosecuted 2,000 people for weed-related crimes, low-level crimes, and
Right.
she's the descendant of slave owners. Now that's not I don't have a problem with that. I don't care. No, I don't think people should be held responsible for the what their parents or their grandparents or great grandparents did. I think that's stupid.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but progressives are the ones that always throw it around. You're a white man. You should be paying reparations, this and that, because you're
and it is. Yeah, I think it is interesting also because, as you say, potentially playing towards garnering the black vote, and you appoint someone as vice running mate, and on the hopes that they will be emblematic of like the struggles of the African American community. But ironically, like these people are all elite. Like these people are all like coming from not coming from backgrounds
they
really relate.
They really are, man. They really are. So I mean, there's those things. There's also she was a terrible prosecutor in the George Gage case. She actually withheld evidence that would have saved a man on death row, and it did. And she had to be forced by a judge to let that evidence go. She's a really bad character. She also lied about you guys.
Wow.
You guys, yeah, I know that one shouldn't be understated. That one is very important. Like this guy, George Cage, he was on death row. She was withholding evidence that would have exonerated him, and a judge literally had to force her. You have to give this up. It's not. We need to see this. Another one was, and you guys are going to love this, she lied about listening to Tupac and Snoop Dogg in college because we know she was lying because when she was in college, they weren't even rapping. She was trying to connect with young voters and it obviously didn't work.
Oh, that's quite cringy.
She's a little bit racist as well. She insinuated...
You played yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Yeah. She's a little bit racist. She insinuated that all Jamaicans smoke weed, and her own father denounced that characterization. Sounds
like she's in a bit of a mess.
Yeah, she really is. I don't look, guys, I'm going through this list, not because of that at all. If I was a progressive, I would not like to vote for this person. And I used to be, as I started this podcast, I used to be progressive. This person does not have your best interests at heart. And I don't know why Joe Biden picked her. She was, she is the worst. I don't see what advantage he gets from that. And, I'll keep going. She said that she smoked weed in a bid to also win more young voters. But as I said before, she prosecuted 2,000 people in her office for smoking weed.
and as for the Republican vice presidential nominee, what do we have going on there?
As the nominee?
Or is it just sort of like the incumbent is running again? Is that how it works?
No.
Like, so Kamala Harris's sort of counterpart on the Republican side.
Oh, Mike Pence. Yeah, you're right. I should stop with her. I think she's. I think if I keep going, we'll go all night. Mike Pence is. I think he used to be a governor. He used to be a governor actually, and a very long time ago, he actually used to be a radio presenter not so long ago. Mike Pence he's actually quite a solid. He's a solid character. I mean, we may have both seen him debate Kamala Harris, and he's actually quite a. I wouldn't want to debate Mike. I'll put it that way. He's a solid debater, and look, he's got an interesting record. But he definitely he's a classic. He's what your vice presidential candidate should be. He'll back the president. He won't.
Can you give us a few things he's done that makes him solid, or even if you could, some things that aren't so solid about him?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the things that he's solid about, it's a lot of the pro-life policies that he's on, and he connects really well with the Christian vote. I mean, a lot of people see him as the Pope of America because of how Christian he is, and often the progressive left see him as that sort of voice on on Christianity that they can direct all their anger to. So he does hold that sort of vote for Trump that really helps Trump get elected. In terms of the things that aren't so great about him, I haven't researched this as much, and that is a good sign. If I was a progressive for a year and a half, and they always attacked him on his religion and stuff, but that doesn't really hold a lot of weight with me, because it's like, well, not only am I a religious dude, I'm a Christian dude, but what policies are wrong, and they don't really hammer him with much. And I think this was to Trump's credit. He picked someone who didn't have a lot of dirt in the closet. I don't like Mike Pence's style. I'd prefer something a bit more bombastic, because the media, if Mike Pence couldn't have done what Trump's done in his last few years, he just doesn't have the personality for it. He's a good vice president, but he wouldn't be a good president, I think, at this point in time. Maybe once upon a time, yes, but the times have changed.
Yep. Okay, so we've got Mike Pence in as the VP, and he's a solid guy from the sounds of it. He has some, as far as policy, people are always going to disagree with different policies that politicians have. That's the nature of politics. Yep. However, he doesn't quite have the same dirt on him as Kamala Harris. I'm trying to be very impartial here.
Yep. No, so I get it.
Kamala Harris,
man.
By the sounds of it, she's just gone back on a few things. Integrity isn't quite there. She's incarcerating people for smoking weed, yet claims to have smoked weed herself. What else did we have there? She was lying about listening to certain music. She withheld evidence. So Mike Pence doesn't have the same sort of dirt on him. However, some of his Christian beliefs may not connect quite as much with the youth of today, is kind of what I'm thinking, which might put him in, might allow people to see him as a bit of a bad guy.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are our two characters in as running mates this year in the 2020 elections. Curtis, have you got anything on these two characters?
No, I think that sums up. I guess like as far as I'd want to go there, I think it's time to talk about the big dogs.
The big dogs. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Whoa. Let's hear it, Joel.
Yeah, sure. I'll do Joe or the Donald.
Let's start with Donald.
Sure. Okay. Good and bad. Okay. Look, Donald Trump. The good things about him is he's an outsider, and he was an outsider before, and he is now, believe it or not. I mean, the bureaucracy is against him, the media is against him, the political establishment is still against him, and it's very much a swamp. And he's going to need another 4 years to clear out as much as possible. He might not even be able to do it in 4 years. And so he's a solid candidate. He really is. He's in terms of the people he appeals to, he's not a Republican. People need to get that out of their heads. He's running on the Republican ticket, but he's not typically a Republican. I mean, a Republican never would have put tariffs, like Mike Pence, he never would have put tariffs on China, yet Donald Trump did. And confronting a lot of the Trump doctrine in the Middle East is completely different. What he's done,
right?
Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, he's married to Ivanka Trump. He is the one that sort of was the architect of the Middle East peace deals, and Donald Trump is his boss, and he sort of said, okay, I need you to approach this in a completely different way because what we've been doing is wrong. And so that's been really good. And look, in terms of Donald Trump's record on the economy, he's trusted more than Biden, so he's done a very good job on that. And in terms of the free speech, and this might be the best thing he's done, he's completely smashed the fact that you can't speak on certain things. He's smashed the media. The media have been losing hundreds of thousands of jobs, and I think that's excellent. I think that's really good for the country. I think it's good for what he's trying to achieve. And but in terms of bad things for the Donald, look, he's had it's funny because maybe I should have said the bad things first so I could rebut myself. But look, he did. So he's had, I think, he's gone bankrupt 17 different times with different companies.
17.
But this is the thing; it's not a problem.
God.
It's not a problem because he's had over 500 companies. So that's not a bad hit rate. That's 500. I think it's like 530 companies he's had, and
Okay.
17 of them have failed. It's like that's a pretty good success rate.
Okay. Yeah.
When I was a
Well,
progressive,
that's very different to
Mhm.
that's very different to what you would hear. I had heard that he'd gone bankrupt many times, but you never hear about the part of him having 500 or so companies, which does completely change that statistic.
I know, because I was using that statistic when I was debating conservatives back when I was progressive. And then when you learn a bit more, you're like, oh crap, they were being very misleading and leaving some of the context out. I don't appreciate that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's other bad things. I mean, what he did. I'm not sure what he was thinking with the Muslim ban. I'm still following up on that. I don't think it was an Islamophobic moment because he didn't put the Muslim ban on early in his presidency on two of the biggest Muslim nations. One of them was like Egypt, and another one was Indonesia. He didn't ban those countries. He banned countries that were on a list that Obama handed him of countries that were sort of on their high risk list, and so
Right.
But look, he's got an interesting record. But in terms of him being erratic, and I think that just comes with the package. He's very much a bull in a china shop, and he needs to do some smashing if we're going to get any good progressives or any conservatives in the government in the future. The swamp is the swamp is a monolith. It's really bad, and it was on the Republican side and it was on the Democrat side.
Right. Okay. And I think also some of the issues, and I'm not a big fan of it, especially when it comes to Trump, some of the things he says and the way he carries on with sexist remarks. I know that those remarks don't determine how you run a country, but I do think that is an issue. You can't be saying that. I do think that there has to be some sort of accountability as the leader of such a powerful nation, where you almost need someone like that to grow up and just be able to keep these things in and not say them. Do you know what I mean?
And
Sure,
I think also
hit me with specifics, though. Hit me with specifics.
Okay. So you go on.
So we have that moment where he said, "Grab them by the pussy." I think that must be his most famous or infamous moment of saying things that should not have been said.
Yeah, sure. The
issue there.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say the issue there is you can't be saying that. As myself, you guys know that there's times when you make a conscious decision not to say something, especially from the position you're in. I try and hold back on my swearing when I'm around mum and dad and my younger brothers, small things like that. And that's just part of being human, being able to control some things you say. So I think that's something he could work on for sure.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm all for holding him accountable for things that he says in office. That was that was a hot mic moment in a bus, when they filmed that. And the problem with that is it was locker room talk. I've heard guys and I've heard girls and what they say in their private groups, and it's pretty reprehensible. Yeah, I don't think they should be held responsible for that in over 15 years after they said it, when they're not in an elected position. I think that's an unreasonable standard to have. What is, but I'd the very people that throw that at me, I'd ask them, okay, so Donald Trump said a few bad things like that, and there's a few things where he's called a bunch of people dogs and this and that, which he calls everyone that he gets annoyed with. But but my question to you would be, what about the actions of Joe Biden and what he's done, and him sniffing little girls while in the, we've all seen the videos, we've all seen the photos. If Donald Trump was doing that, my gosh, it'd be the end of him. Why is there a double standard?
Yeah.
So I question the sincerity of the people throwing that at the Donald, and I haven't seen any credible evidence that he's actually acted on any of these comments in a salacious manner. So forgive me if I discarded a bit, but I just don't see that as an issue, because he didn't say that specific comment, which is the most popular one used. He didn't even say that while in office. It was behind closed doors, and it was
Yeah.
and that's why I'm just like, okay, I can think of a ton of things that I've said in the past that I regret that I wouldn't want coming up, if I ever went for elected office in 20, 30 years,
Yeah.
do you sort of see my point?
I think
that's a fair point.
Sort of more there are sort of actions that have tainted his past that are probably more significant as well than just some like potentially sexist remarks.
Yeah, hit me. Let's do specifics.
So I guess ones that are probably I think would affect his capacity. I think it makes me question his ethical integrity in governance would be his like basically non-existent tax contributions that are just very recently come to light.
You're gonna hit me with that.
And
okay.
And there's that, and there's also the pretty questionable history of how employees under his construction company have been treated during the early stages of his career, basically equated to slave labor sort of type setup. Yeah.
All right. No, let's address these things one at a time.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the way that his workers were treated, so send me something after this. But my understanding,
will do.
But my understanding of his, I think I've got better attacks than you on Donald Trump. Actually, I'll give you one after this. But with the way Donald Trump treated the workers loved him when they were working with the companies that I saw, because he was always around the workers. He was always touring on site. During 9/11, he put his wealth and his resources into helping the people on the streets. And there's some photos of him on the streets when 9/11 happened, and him being out there with the crews, sort of helping them, his construction crews and all that. And in terms of them not getting paid enough, well, I mean, did he not pay people, or was it a mutual agreement? Was it a mutual agreement between two parties on a set price, and they just complaining that they don't get paid more? Because they can always go to another company. That's a great thing about America. People have to bid for your labor. Employers have to bid for your labor. And if you can get something better elsewhere, then you go elsewhere. If you can't, then that's the value of the labor. But I'm happy to move on to the taxes thing, which is a lot easier to rebut because we can actually speak specifically to it. So Trump, the argument, that is a salacious lie. It's completely wrong. If you read the same article, they disprove that comment. He paid, I think it was $3.2 million in 2016 and $1 million in 2017. It's either that or it's the other way around with those two. That pretty much proves that it didn't happen. That's and it was in the article. People just had to read past the title. What happened was he announced in 2015, I'm running for president. He has like hundreds of companies. He said that this is what's happening, and then all of a sudden the world hated him. All of a sudden, rappers stopped singing songs about him and started slamming him as being racist and this and that, because the whole media and political establishment turned against him. What happened to his businesses? Well, he lost a lot of money. This billionaire, a lot of his assets were devalued. Now, because of that, he ended up paying less tax in 2016 and 2017 because have you guys done your taxes before?
Sorry, you cut out there.
What did you miss?
I had you, thankfully.
Oh, you had me? Oh, good.
Yeah.
So have you guys paid your taxes before?
Not in depth. I mean, I've just done the MyGov automated sort of thing. I haven't done it properly.
So no, that's all right. Let me explain this to you, and keep this in mind. This is very important to know for yourself. So when you do your taxes, you can have tax deductible things. You can have which bring down your tax, and you can also have items where it's a capital gain or a capital loss. Now, if you have an asset and it loses value, you can offset your income in future years.
Yeah.
For example, let's say, I don't know, do you guys trade cryptos or something?
I just shares, but yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I'm familiar with a lot of the concept.
So for example, you might buy a share in a company. You might buy $1,000 worth of this share, and in a year's time, that devalues to $600. So that the capital loss for that year is $400. Now, if you gain $400 in a future year, you can use that capital loss from a past year to offset that, so you pay no tax on that if you sell it. Now with Donald
On
Trump,
that
with
$400.
exactly. So with what happened with Donald Trump is in 2016, 2017, his businesses had taken such a heavy hit. His assets and his properties and his everything he owned took a severe devaluation, and the Trump brand lost value because the Trump brand is something, untangible but also tangible in terms of the Trump towers and the buildings and all that and the real estate. So what happened was all that lost value, and so he ended up having to pay only $750 in tax in 2016 and 2017. However, due to what ended up happening was they asked him to pay, he actually overpaid tax. Isn't that funny how they spun that to completely tell you something different? He ended up overpaying tax, and in total in 2016 and 2017, he paid $4.2 million in tax. Now, rather than ask for that back, he said, no, hold on to it because I might need it for future years. Now, if you have a problem with how that tax code works, if you don't like that people can, anyone can do it. You, me, this tax code similar in Australia. You can do that sort of thing. Exactly the same process that I explained to you.
Yeah.
If you have a problem with that, then take it up with Joe Biden, who wrote the tax code in 47 years. So can you guys see how they completely turned that story around, and it's all about framing?
Yeah.
It took me 10 minutes to explain that. Sorry, go on.
That I initially heard that he didn't pay his taxes, and I was like, as everyone else who initially heard that, just showed it on Instagram as well, and I went, oh man, that's Trump cheating the laws. There he goes again. But I did actually hear, and I can't pinpoint when or where I heard this. Again, it was probably through Instagram, which is such an unreliable news source. Excuse my French.
Yeah.
And that it was false information that had been spread about him. And I never delved in deeper because the taxes thing that was brought up and is continuously brought up against Trump is a load of rubbish.
Yeah, and look, it keeps coming up. That's the funny thing. They're like, release your tax returns, this and that. You only pay $750 in tax. He should release his tax returns once they're audited. But if they're being audited, you can't ask for them back because they're being audited. Otherwise, what will happen is he'll release something and it'll be completely a fine-tooth comb. I want to know if the guy's being paid money by China. I want to know if he's held accountable by another, a power above himself. I want to know these things. But it's just not the truth, what they've been saying. Just like the Russiagate stuff.
The Russiagate stuff?
Yeah, the whole Russia, what happened with the Russiagate. They were saying that Russia helped Trump win the election in 2016.
Yes. I have.
Yeah. So look, you got to try a bit harder with these attacks, man. It's not really sticky. Can I give you one? Like I promised?
Yeah, I haven't heard the term Russiagate because obviously, I think we probably digest pretty different news sources. But the Russian intervention is at least from my experience in popular media is very much it's basically fact now. So it's at least perceived as very much a thing that happened.
Yeah,
Russian involvement.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, the one of the attacks I would have thrown at him, and this one will stick, is a lot of his merchandise in his first campaign. It was all made in China. So there's one. Right. You know what another one is, and this speaks more to him. The steel that was used to make the Trump towers, they were made with Chinese steel, not American steel. So you hold on to those because those are rare attacks I could find. But that's pretty much. I can't think of anything else at this stage. But that's basically those are ones that I haven't found a rebuttal for. It's like, yeah, that's true. That's what happened. Maybe he's changed it. No, he wouldn't do it now. I don't think he'd do it now. But if you want to smear the guy and say that he's he used it when it suited him, but now he's railing against it because it's popular, then you can throw that attack at him, even though I wouldn't. But yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting. And Joel, I know you and I have spoken about this off camera and how we're both very open to having our opinions shifted if someone presents a reasonable point. And I think you really have presented some reasonable points there. And it is good to hear that because I know the popular media is very against Trump and everything you hear, such as taxes, such as some of his less than savory phrases. And I think you've actually done quite a good job there at debunking them without being a complete suck up to the guy. You have brought forward some great points there, and I appreciate that. That's awesome. And I think the people listening are really going to appreciate that as well, because I know that if you're not out there doing your own independent research, all you're going to hear about is the bad things about Trump, and all you're going to hear about is the good things about Biden, because I know that's what my newsfeed looks like quite often. And here at the cafe, we always talk about diversifying your newsfeed.
Yeah.
So I think that's another awesome reason going in a really good way, a really respectful way as well. So let's talk about Joe Biden for the Democrats. We've had a chat about Trump and the things that well, actually, we didn't really get a chance to chat about his policies, but we can talk policies soon.
Yep.
Let's give a quick rundown on Joe Biden.
Yeah, sure. So Joe Biden, Joe Biden. Okay, so look, he's going to be 80 in 750 days. So he's going to be 80 years old very soon. Joe Biden is he's been in politics 47 years, and he's passed a number of different bills, which are very concerning. Progressives, this is what I would say to you. Joe Biden passed the 1984, the 1986, the 1988, the 1994 crime bills, which led to the mass incarceration of black people, kept them under the thumb of, a lot of private prisons as well, and it enriched a lot of, private prison owners, and it has not helped Black America at all. It's been terrible for Black America. And he also helped expand the welfare state, which led to the single motherhood rate of women for Black Americans and Americans to skyrocket from 20% to up to now it's 78%. This is not good. This is not a good guy, and I'd go as far as saying the guy's a racist. I mean, he recently told people, and this is something he said, I'm not saying 30 years ago. I'm saying he said this year. He said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. So basically,
you can't be saying that.
See, like what does that mean? If you really think about it for more than 2 seconds, that means that if your skin color, if you have this amount of melanin in your skin, you therefore have to have this opinion. Like, can you think of something more racist?
Is this literally identity politics?
It's literally identity politics.
It's like as close as you can.
It's exactly. It is. It's a cookie cutter identity politics. If you say this, you are just so far gone. You're so far gone. It's like saying, you guys, you naturally think certain way, and there's no way you can change it. Or with me, I'm not, because I'm Lebanese and Syrian, I meant to vote a certain way. Like if they did that to my race, I'd be like, what the hell's wrong with you? I can change my opinion. I just did. I was a progressive and now I'm a conservative. It's like, what's your problem? You can do it with religion. You can do it with everything. I don't understand why something that you can't change is meant to influence something you can change. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Biden's
I got more.
using the identity policy. I am sure you do have more. Well, so Biden's got he's got a bad history as far as that prison and the privatization of prisons goes. Definitely not a progressive mindset, and he is appealing to the progressives.
Yeah, he's trying to. I mean, I forgot to say this before, but Kamala Harris, this is a bad thing. Kamala Harris is actually more progressive than Bernie Sanders on it based off her voting record from, I think, last year.
How so?
Well, she's voted on more progressive bills, considered progressive bills than Bernie. That's just what it came down to. So she believes in, now I don't know which thing, I like, for example, she wants to abolish fracking, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. And, Joe Biden said it multiple times, yet he's flip-flopped, so people don't trust him on anything now. And she's also said that she wants to eliminate private healthcare. That's over 100 million people in America on private healthcare with their employers. That's not a good idea. It's not a good idea at all.
That doesn't sound like and why? So that doesn't sound like a good idea, but why would that be a good idea for someone who thinks it is a good idea? Can you explain what they might be thinking? I'd be interested to know the different sides of that.
Look, the healthcare situation. You mean fracking or healthcare, or both?
Healthcare.
Sure, healthcare. Look, healthcare is not a topic I typically touch in the USA. We're 25 million people here. What we've got right now, kind of, it seems like it works. We've got a public option where if you don't have private healthcare, we'll take care of you, and that's fine. And we've also got a private option if you want additional care, shorter waiting times and this and that. I think that works for 25 million people, just like it does in a lot of these states in Europe that are wealthy and small in population. In America, I don't know if that's going to work. 330 million people, it has its own challenges. And the arguments that they put forward, so I'm still open to having my mind changed on this because I don't know what's going to work. But I think it's a bad idea because it's so radically different to what they have right now, which is all right. America does still have the best 5-year cancer survival rate in the world. The reason why a lot of their drugs are so expensive is because America puts the most amount of money to investing into more medicine, into new, I think it's something like 80% of all new medical, discoveries happen in America because it costs like $1 million just to discover one medicine and test it and get it approved by the CDC. It costs a lot of money, and not all of them will get approved. So it's very expensive.
Right.
That's why that's so expensive. By the way, Trump's bringing the price of a lot of those prescription drugs down, by the way, and they hate him for it.
That's interesting. You don't hear about that very often.
You don't, bro. We could talk about this all day. They actually, after he said that, and he said that this year, he said, "I've got a lot of rich and powerful enemies. You might not see me for a while." That's what he said. I'm not even kidding. Those are his words. And I know you can search it. You say, I've got to look. Yeah, you can find those. Search it. You will find it with those words. But but also,
I've got to say, here at the Culture Cafe, we're a little bit worried ourselves that the deep state could be coming after us. So
ever since we made contact with Carnage House Productions, I've been living in fear.
Yeah, definitely. Think about getting have a safety plan. A bug out plan for sure.
But I fear for Dougal Cameron's safety on a daily basis.
Good on you. But look, I'll finish this with the healthcare point. One of the points they make is that if they get rid of private healthcare, it'll be cheaper if they get rid of it and just go with public healthcare, because I can't remember the statistic, but over I think it's 10 years or something, they'll save $5 billion or something like that. Which isn't that much, but the argument is they want to get rid of the middleman. The private health insurance is a middleman. They don't need the intermediary. It should just be you and directly with the health provider, the healthcare provider. That's what it should be. There shouldn't be a middleman. That's their argument. I don't know if it's going to work in concept because you need to have people to bid and this and that. But I need to look into this topic more. It's not something I feel comfortable saying. This is what I'm.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's a bit of a tangent away from this episode anyway. So we've had a chat about how the elections work, the parties involved, the leaders of these parties, and we've spoken a little bit about the history of each leader and some of the good things and potentially some of the bad things. We've also debunked a few things about Donald Trump, which has made for some interesting conversation. Joel, I've got a question for you.
Hit me.
I would love for you to give us a very quick summary for each side on what America would look like should the Democrats win and what America would look like should the Republicans win. And potentially in that, could you let us know what each of these parties are promising and what they're going to follow through on? Just very quickly on each side, what's it going to look like?
Look, it's hard for me to say what they're going to follow through on, but I'll have a crack at it. If I had to put my money down, look, there's multiple different ways this election could result in. As I said before, there are 3 chambers of government in this particular case. You've got Congress, you got the judiciary, the Supreme Court, and then you've also got the presidency. Now, only 2 of those are up for election this time around: the presidency and the Supreme Court and Congress. Right now, the Supreme Court is overwhelmingly conservative, 6-3 right now. There's that's pretty overwhelming. Now, in terms of what the country would look like, I'm gonna in answering this, I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna answer it in terms of, okay, what would happen if the Democrats win the House, being the presidency, and also both chambers of Congress? but also I'm going to
Yep.
answer it for the inverse for the Republicans, because it's different if it's halfway. If it's half, it's different.
Okay.
So if Trump wins,
I think, yeah, and
yeah,
before you started, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Owen, but I think what you might be interested in, Owen, is more specifically like differences in policy. Is that what you're asking for, Owen? Okay, cool.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Now look, I'll touch on policy. In terms of policy, Donald Trump's for lower taxes, unleashing American energy, including oil and fracking and all of that, and really taking away the shackles of the American economy. They want to get rid of the red tape, the green tape being environmental stuff. I think in Trump's first 500 days, he said, for every one of the promises he made in the last election was, for every one piece of legislation I put forward, I'm going to get rid of two. So he was trying to get really deregulate, get rid of all that red tape. Well, in his first 500 days, he not only kept that, but for every one piece of legislation he put forward, he got rid of 23, which is insane. And there's this great photo of him standing next to the ones he put forward, and then the massive pile of the ones that he got rid of. Now, Donald Trump, Donald Trump's also for peace in the Middle East. I mean, this is something I didn't think was possible. Yet he's got peace deals across the line with Bahrain, the UAE, Israel, and one that's coming out with Somalia as well very soon with Israel. This is excellent. I have never seen something like this ever before. I've lived a short life, but even in the history of us understanding the Middle East, this is one of the biggest leap forwards for progress I've ever seen. And anyone and this might be a good transition, anyone that's pro-war, like Joe Biden, who's voted for every war that's happened, is completely wrong. He was not for killing Osama bin Laden. He did not want to do it. He was not particularly good when it came to a lot of these wars. He got it completely wrong. And he is a pro-war candidate. I mean, if we were under Hillary Clinton, not only would we still have troops in Syria, and when I say we, I mean Australia with America, we would actually, we would be even more, at war with these countries. Because if he's what happened was in the primaries, Joe Biden, he often associated his credibility with Obama's credibility. So every decision Obama made, he pretty much agreed with. So that includes, except stuff like the Osama bin Laden one. Now, that includes stuff like bombing all these countries in the Middle East. And the amount of drone countries
increased a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They did. And, the bombings, guys, they're especially with drone strikes, the hit rate is very bad. I mean, out of the casualties, 90% of them are civilian. I learned that from the progressives because they're anti-war, and I was following all this. They didn't like Obama, and on top of that, with the pro-war stuff, Obama dropped so many bombs on Syria, he ran out of bombs. This is coming from a country that has the biggest military budget in the world, and they ran out of bombs. That's a lot of bombs, and any continuation of that, I do not want to see it. I don't want to see a third world war with these countries. I'm not saying he would start a third world war. I'm saying that I think he would enrich himself and the military industrial complex in America. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. And you've got great, people coming out against the pro-war stuff. But Joe Biden, he would raise taxes severely. We recently had 50 Cent, the rapper, who came out and he said, I don't want to be 20 Cent. I'm voting for Donald Trump and endorsing him. And you also had the other rappers like Lil Wayne come out as well. And Joe Biden, he's the candidate of the corporate Democrats. There are a lot of corporate Republicans who, after Trump took over the Republican Party, they ran over the Democrat side. Because the Democratic Party is the party of the billionaire class. Joe Biden has raised more money than Donald Trump recently because all the billionaires have been chucking their money into him. And on top of that, this isn't a conspiracy, but Joe Biden he's going to push America, just as it was for 8 years, that he's going to push them back in the direction of more globalism. That means more American jobs moving overseas. That's going to kill, states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Michigan had a bunch of different car companies move to them because of Donald Trump. This would reverse all the good that he's done for middle America and industrial America. Joe Biden, what else? Geez, what else would he do? The guy, as I said before, big tech will continue to do what they've done. So that's going to affect us all of a sudden. Joe Biden's not
Arguably,
going to.
though, I feel like, I mean, and just
Yeah,
sorry
sure.
to cut you off there, but because you brought up a good point that I'd like to touch on. I feel like, and maybe this is just a function of the media that I consume, but I feel like it is definitely the Trump campaign that has positioned most. I mean, I feel like they have manipulated media more so. Would you agree with that statement, that they've probably, like, through Cambridge Analytica and the extensive sort of spreadsheets that were discovered earlier this year?
No, not at all. Cambridge Analytica is gone. It's been gone for 3.5 years.
Sure, but it was influential
of course it was. Of course it was. But you know what else was influential? What I started this episode with: 2.6 million to 10.4 million votes were swung by big tech using salacious methods. All Cambridge Analytica did was, when they started it, they promised we're going to get rid of it, and they did. What they promised was, all they did was collect data, and they used it to predict certain behaviors of certain people so they could target their advertising. How is that any different to what Facebook does with consumer stuff? How is it any different? They sell all of our private information, whereas we've got a situation where big tech in California are incredibly bad actors. They're terrible. What they've done is they're in a bubble, and they start censoring opinions that are different to their own. That is not a sustainable way of government. I don't want conservatives to have that power, and I don't want progressives to have that power. It's a terrible idea. It's terrible.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I guess there's definitely two sort of functions of the platforms. I guess, like, parties use them, and then the platforms themselves, as you say, are using them themselves to manipulate the political environment. Okay, interesting. Yeah, please continue what you were saying before.
Yeah, look, what I was saying was big tech. If they aren't checked, and I don't know why the do nothing Republicans who are in Congress now didn't check them before. If they're not checked, we're screwed. We're totally screwed. If you can't get to, if you can't see this content, then we can't talk. It's going to completely end free thought unless we have some viable alternatives that we can even get access to. That's what I'm scared about. Big tech, what they've done. I mean, we've had situations where people like you and I, in 10 years, they've been fighting for this. They've been fighting for an online channel. They hire people. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars coming in that keep their business running. They hire people to run the business, and their Patreon gets shut down. And what happens then? You're screwed. There's no free speech. You can't express ideas. If one side can't turn up to the debate, then there's only one opinion, and that's the progressive side. Now, unlucky for me, I'd like to join the winning side. And at this stage, it looks like the establishment is progressive. Why would I want to stay on this side? Trust me, I don't. But it's the truth. What's happening? Okay. And they're using these overbearing tactics and overbearing mechanisms like big tech and there's Fox News over there, and then there's like OAnon, and then there's all of the dozens of other news agencies out there. They've got the ABC, who are all progressive. You've got CNN. You've got it's completely one-sided over there. Okay. And not even Fox News has Trump's back, like, all the time. They often disagree with him. I mean, let's not forget that the first debate. In the first debate, we had a presidential debate. We had what's his name, who was the debate moderator, who's on Fox News, but he wasn't good, was he? We had Chris Wallace. Do you remember that? That was a disaster. That was the worst presidential debate I've seen. Yet he was from Fox News.
So, and you said, interestingly, like, how you said how you feel, like, how things are going. I wanted to sort of get maybe we could wrap up by, like, some predictions from you, like, where you think things are heading. Obviously, like, polls are infamously unreliable, and we never really know where things will go. But where do you think, where to from here?
And I'd just like to cut in there as well before you answer that, Joel. If you could as well, maybe just considering that we are an Australian podcast, and most of the people listening are Australian. Shout out to the listeners we get over in the US. We love you guys as well. But your opinion on what is going to happen, and your opinion on how this is going to impact us as Australians, would also be super interesting.
Yeah. So what I think is going to happen is, I think it's going to be a Trump win, and I think it's going to be overwhelming. how many times do we have to see the polls are wrong? How many times? Can you guys tell me? Because I don't know how many times we're going to see that they're wrong. They were wrong in 2016.
32.
32, you reckon? They were wrong in 2016 with Brexit. They were completely wrong, and Brexit got across the line. They were wrong about Donald Trump at the end of 2016. Completely wrong. Not only the polls were wrong, but also the pundits were wrong. Then we also had in early 2017, we had the UK also go up for another election for the European Parliament, and the Brexit Party under Nigel Farage, they overwhelmingly won almost all the seats. And then we had our election in Australia, where the polls were completely wrong. Scott Morrison was paying like something 7 to 1 for winning, and he ended up crushing Labor here, and that was amazing. And then the UK also had another election win where they won an 80-seat majority at the end of last year for their federal election. They have one every 5 years. And there were seats there that hadn't been turned conservative for 100 years, guys, 100 years. And an 80-seat majority, that is a ton of people. Everyone was saying that when, in the UK election, in the Australian election, when Brexit was happening, when Trump was happening, in all of these cases, it was the political establishment that got it wrong. They said when Hillary Clinton gets in, they were saying when Jeremy Corbyn, the head of Labour in the UK, gets in. They were saying when, I was sitting down with the Deputy Prime Minister, the former Deputy Prime Minister early last year. His name's John Anderson. He was actually our acting Prime Minister during 9/11. And I sat down with him and I asked him about the election, what he thinks is going to happen. He said, well, basically, when Bill Shorten gets in, this and that, and I was just like, oh my gosh, he really thought they were going to get in. And when I see that, guys, I'm like, okay, they've been wrong 5 major times. What is going on? I think they're going to be wrong this time, and that's fine. Go check out my channel. I've done a sit down with John Ruddick, and there's a segment where we talk about the polling in the specific swing states and why they're wrong.
Yeah,
but seriously, the polls are not right. I don't know why they keep mucking it up, but I think it's because it's in their polling methods. I think that's what it is, because I'm trying to understand why all these Anglosphere nations like Australia, the UK, and America are getting these things wrong so severely. And I think it's because of this. I think their polling methods are wrong. Technology is affecting all of us at the same time. And I think that the polling methods, they need to be updated. And there was one polling agency that got really close to picking Trump as the winner in all of the states. They almost picked all of them. And they're called Trafalgar Group. And they didn't use a typical polling method. What they did, rather than asking, calling you up and saying, are you voting for Trump or not? They called people up and they said, what do you think your neighbor's going to vote for? And that turned out to be way more accurate. And they predicted a lot of the Rust Belt wins that all the polls thought were solid Democrats. And Trump ended up winning.
Funny.
And so they're
interesting.
Exactly. And it's a different method. They're thinking out of the box. Yet, the Democrats have had 4 years to work this out. They've had 4 years to work out how to beat Donald Trump, and they've failed. They've run out of time. I don't know how long you guys want this segment to go, but Donald Trump's black and Hispanic vote are going to win him this thing. He got the
I like these strong predictions. I like this.
Look, honestly, man, I keep looking at the evidence and I keep thinking, because you know me, I'm comfortable with being wrong. I don't want to be wrong a minute longer than I have to be. If I'm making a fool of myself, if I'm making a fool of myself with the facts, I want to know. But I keep looking at these facts, I keep weighing it up, and I'm like, I don't understand why. I'm not saying I'm the only one. I listen to people who also point me in the right direction, but I don't understand why there's so few of us. I mean, honestly, I've said this multiple times. If I'm right on this, I swear I want a job in the ABC or in one of these main news outlets, because they're all wrong on this stuff. They're completely wrong. If you look at Donald Trump's black vote, I think he's going to get over double digits in the black vote. I think he's going to go over 15% of the black vote. Typically, and I'll give you a brief back on this. Typically, Republicans get 8% of the black vote. Democrats dominate that. They usually get like 90% of the black vote. If Democrats have this saying, if a Republican ever gets over 15% or over of the black vote, then Democrats will never win an election again. So
Wow.
if Republicans are getting 15%, then that's it. Now the Republicans, they typically got 8%. John McCain got 8% when he ran against Obama, and Mitt Romney in the second run, he got 8%, and Donald Trump got 10%. That's more than both of them. Now Donald Trump right now in some polls like Rasmussen, like Gallup, he's getting like 20-30% approval rating among black people. Now, I've just spent all this time ragging polls. How much more could it be? I don't know. I really don't know. I think, look, I'm going to pull it back and say I think it'll be more than 15%, but I don't know. I don't know what the upward limit of that is. The Brexit movement, the black people leaving the Democratic Party because they're realizing that Democrat cities like, Baltimore that have been Democrat for 40, 50 years, the Democrats have been in control and they've done nothing for them. They've done nothing. So Donald Trump comes along and he says, what have you got to lose? I'm offering you the highest employment rate for black Americans in history. 9 million people, millions of people off food stamps, particularly black Americans. I'm creating opportunity bubbles for black Americans living in these suburbs so that they have lower taxes. And I'm also we've got the lowest incarceration rate of black people in like 15 years or something. And he passed prison reform for black America. That's appealing. Not even Obama passed prison reform. And don't even get me started on the Hispanics. And look, but do you see that there's all these things and they add up and it's like, okay, what is going on? He's going to flip some states. And I've even gone as far in some cases, and I don't want to be too out there, but I said, look, I'm not ruling out a 49 state landslide. I'm just not.
Wow. Okay. So you heard it here first on the Culture Cafe. Donald Trump winning 15% or more of the black and Hispanic vote and a potential landslide victory.
Let me just correct you on that. With the Hispanic vote, that whole segment was all in the black vote. The Hispanic vote's a completely different story. Okay. The Hispanic vote's completely different. So he won something like, I think it was like 30% of the Hispanic vote. Since then, he's done so much for the Hispanics. It'll be even more with the Hispanics. It'll be even more because, people say Donald Trump's he's racist. Hispanics hate him for building the wall, this and that. They actually don't hate him. They actually like the wall. They actually know a lot of them know people that have come across and they've been victims of sexual assault and drug trafficking and this and that. And they actually are in favor of that because they know what's going on. They know what the truth is. And so their rating is going to improve as well. I mean, there's a video recently I did with Riccardo Bosi where we were sitting down. I played this video for him. This UFC fighter, he says, the Democrats do nothing for us. We've got a head on our shoulders too. We know what we want, and the Democrats have done nothing. Donald Trump is our best way forward, and he's been doing some phenomenal stuff for our community.
And when you say he's been doing the phenomenal stuff, you're talking about increased jobs, opportunity bubbles, lower incarceration rate.
Absolutely, lowest Hispanic unemployment rate. And the same goes for the women's. We've actually got the lowest women unemployment rate ever. Like this guy, if he was a Democrat, he would be hailed more than Obama. But because he's got an R next to his name and because he said he has a different style and he's not statesman-like, everyone's like, okay, we've got to hate this guy now. How else do you explain all the rappers coming out against him when he used to be an emblem of the American dream? Everyone wanted to be him, He's not a moral leader. He's not a moral thought leader. He's someone that's getting the job done. That there's a big difference. I don't want people, as Riccardo Bosi says, I don't want someone that, you want someone that has rounded vowels. We've had 40, 50 years of that. We need someone different to get the job done, and especially here in Australia. Yeah. Do you want me to finish on how that's going to impact Australia, just briefly?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd actually love to jump in.
Yeah, sure.
I would. I think we will finish on how it impacts Australia. Just going back to the Hispanic vote, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because I know we have gone for a while now. Yeah. So you have a lot of people slamming Donald Trump about his border control and locking up children on the border, putting them in. You have all these stories about children being put in cages and so forth. Yeah. I'd love for you to maybe dispel some of the myths about that and also some of the truths?
Easy.
Just really quickly, just while we are talking about the Hispanic vote.
Easy. Before Donald Trump came along, Hillary Clinton, Obama, Nancy Pelosi, these are all the leaders of their party. Biden, they were all in favor of a border wall / fence. And you can find the videos, guys. There's compilations of them all saying it. Chuck Schumer, the head of the Democrats in the Senate, they were all in favor until Donald Trump became president. Even Bernie Sanders, the progressive, he said that, allowing people to come into the country, open borders. These are his words. He said, open borders is a Koch brothers conspiracy to get labor into the country, like lower, cheaper labor into the country. That was what they were saying before Donald Trump came along. Obama was the one that built the cages that Donald Trump's using. Obama built them. Who built the cages, Joe? That's what Donald Trump asked. That's what Donald Trump asked him, Biden, in the debates. And the thing with the reason why he has to separate them is because you need to understand, if you have a child with you and you across the border and you get pulled up by the law enforcement, that is your ticket into America. So what they had to do was separate the kids and establish, is this person actually the kid? Because what ends up happening is a lot of these kids, they're not with parents, they're abducted, and they're used as a ticket to get into America. And often they get sold into sex, that's the problem. So you can't, Biden completely ignores this fact and this problem that you're separating kids from people who say they're the parents, but you got to establish that first. You can't just, and there's currently 500 that are separated, last I checked. But that's something that, you got to address it. You can't just allow these people who say that they're the kids to go, and then the kid ends up in like a brothel and, raped and this and that for the rest of their life over and over again. We can't have that. The human trafficking is a serious problem, and Hispanics know about it, and that's why they like Trump addressing it, and they like the wall.
Okay, there we go. That's thanks for dispelling some of the myths about that. That's something I've always been super interested in knowing more about. So thanks for that.
What's coming our way?
Let's end on the impact on this, where we are now, Australia.
Right.
All right. Well, as I've made it obviously clear, I think Donald Trump's going to win, and overwhelmingly. And I'm not saying he's going to win the popular vote, but I think he'll win overwhelmingly. And the result for that for Australia is very good. It's very good. It means that and I haven't said this yet, means the monolith that is China will be put in check. We're in a very bad situation if Biden wins, and we've got a China situation. They'll basically, I don't see what would China could. I don't know, man. Either China could seize anything they wanted after that. I feel like anything goes if Donald Trump's not in the White House. And, him getting the White House, I think it's possible to pay down the national debt as much as we can, which is very important. And I think that the world will be a lot safer with the Middle East, because if you want a safe world, you want a safe Middle East. And Donald Trump has made more progress than all of the presidents combined, basically, literally all of the presidents combined. In the past, he's done a phenomenal job ending ISIS and killing the head military leader in Iran that's killed hundreds or even thousands of Americans, Qasem Soleimani, and
I do remember that,
and also the head of ISIS. But yeah, look, his record, I think, if he has another 4 years like what we've just seen, I think it'll be excellent. He did a very good job on the economy. When America sneezes, Australia gets a cold. When the US election crashed into 2008, Australia went with it. It was just their subprime mortgages, yet that affected us. Isn't that crazy? So it is going to be, it's very important. That's why we follow it. Otherwise we wouldn't bother. And also the trends we see there are going to come here. And that goes for everything. That goes for who's talking about the media. That talks about, talks to the fact that you've got the Joe Rogans over there. We've got the Dave Rubins over there, the Ben Shapiros, the progressives like the Young Turks and the Secular Talk and Jimmy Dore. The same trends that just as they will rise and the mainstream media is falling over there in their ratings, so too will it happen over here. And there will come a day, because we're a few chapters behind America, and we're a few more chapters behind the UK, because they're even further deteriorated. There will come a day when a Trump-like figure will come along, and he will have to try and purge the swamp that has become our political class and the establishment and the bureaucracy. Like getting rid of, for every piece of legislation they put forward, they get rid of 23. We need that. We can't have a situation where we've had these decades of all these politicians, these do-nothing liberals and the do-nothing Labor, who they get in, they say they're going to do this, they don't do that. And then the Australian people lose out in the end. We can't have that. And so, honestly, if Trump loses, we're in a very, very bad shape. Is there hope after that? Yeah, there's a glimmer of hope. I just feel very pessimistic if he were to lose. But all the evidence that I've been following is to the contrary. I think he's got it. And even if the mail-in voting debacle, which is another thing I talked about in my podcast with John Ruddick, check it out. I don't want to drag this out any longer. But even if the mail-in voting gets so bad that we end up with Nancy Pelosi as the president of the United States, and as you can hear, there's a lot to that. Even if the mail-in voting goes that bad, I think the Supreme Court will stop that before that gets that bad, and which is obviously a conservative Supreme Court right now.
Okay.
But yeah, man, that's where the chips are going to fall, and I'll be very interested to see that on Wednesday. It's Tuesday American time, Wednesday for us.
Yeah, so that is going to be interesting. So just to wrap up, we have basically a predicted landslide victory from Trump. And what this means for us in Australia is a more peaceful world due to peace in the Middle East, and it keeps us safer by keeping China in check. Those are the two benefits that you mentioned, Joel.
Yeah, and economic as well. We want a strong economy.
And economic benefits. Okay, so there we go.
Wait.
And you're predicting that if Biden does win, which sounds unlikely, but we never know, that's going to be bad for Australia, and it will only be a matter of time before a polarizing figure, an Australian version of Trump, comes along and starts to absolutely clean out the political class.
Get in my face all the things that I've been saying, but at the same time, I can throw in their face big tech censorship, big tech moving votes, big tech.
Fully understand. So thank you for that, and thanks for bringing forth those opinions in a really, really respectable way, in a way that we can have a chat and have a conversation about it. Here at the Culture Cafe, as our listeners know, we're super into having these sorts of conversations. We just lay it all out there, and even if there are some disagreements, it's just great to get those into the mix and hear what the other person has to say and have your own misconceptions debunked, because that's what it's all about. Now, we usually do a segment at the end of the episode. However, this episode has absolutely used that as our final send-off for this episode. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, sweet. We can do that.
Sweet. Sounds good. So, Joel, who are you giving a big ups to?
Yeah, look, my big ups is to Riccardo and Tracy Takax-Thorne, who just ran in the Queensland election. Their votes are trickling in now. I look forward to checking them out once this live stream's done. And they've done a phenomenal job. They've done a really phenomenal job. And just to congratulate them on their running a very honest run, a very transparent run. I mean, find me another politician that has as much transparency as Riccardo Bosi with his weekly show of unfiltered, unedited sort of conversations with someone who asks him, how much money are you making every week? How much are you paid by any Jews or anyone from the United Arab Emirates or this and that? We literally went that far in this week's episode. You won't find it, and I just want to give a big ups to them on a good run, and successful or not, I know they'll keep fighting for their country and their community. So yeah.
Okay, big up to Riccardo and Tracy, and I believe it's the Australia One Party.
That's right.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Curtis, who are you giving a big ups to this week, man?
Bigging ups, my housemate Lev. Oh, I just walked through the door. Did you hear that, Lev? I just bigged you up. Anyway, I just shouted you out in the podcast.
Live as it happens.
He's been great to have around. He's about to go on he's about to move down to Rye, so I'm gonna miss man when he moves out, but it's been great to have him around. He's brought a lot of good to my life the time he's been here. So shout out Lev.
Nice.
Shout out,
He'll
Lev.
be coming back for the weekends. Please come
Flying
back.
Dutchman.
Yeah, he's going to be visiting apparently. So his girlfriend's still here. So the Flying Dutchman will be returning. Lovely. What about you, Owen?
Awesome. Well, I am going to give a big ups to Jordan Zambelli. Jordan, I see you on your Instagram stories. Man has been cooking up some pastries, some bread. He's doing it all right now. And I've got to say, every time I open up Instagram, I'm hoping that I see one of his creations, whether it's a Danish pastry or a croissant or a sourdough loaf. I'm looking forward to it, and it's very inspiring. I myself love to get in the kitchen, and it's awesome to see Jordan putting in the absolute miles. You're an inspiration, man. Keep it up. Big ups.
Awesome.
Good choice. Joel, thank you so much for joining us. Really love this episode.
This is my pleasure, and judging from the comments, everyone's been enjoying it as well. They've been watching. They've been a solid 25 people constantly, 30 people constantly watching with us.
Oh, right, on the live stream, yeah, right.
Check the comments.
Nice. Hello to
subscribe. Make sure you guys
hello
subscribe
to all these
them,
people who have never heard of the Culture Cafe. Come check us out.
Shout out to the live stream crew. Thank you for joining us this whole time.
Yeah, and you guys feel free to edit this video and re-upload if you have a YouTube channel and make and do that and do some clips for yourself. I think it'll do well.
Definitely. Well, have you got anything you want to say? Any social media platforms you want to just plug really quickly while you're on the podcast, Joel?
Yeah, sure. Everyone follow me on Facebook, Joel Jammal, Joel, Jamm for Mary, AL. And follow me there. And also on YouTube with the same tag. There's not many people. Look for the white chairs and the eyebrows, and that's me. It can't go wrong. They don't come in that's a solid combination. You won't find it anywhere else. But
cool.
But thank you guys.
The white chairs and the eyebrows.
The ivory chairs and the eyebrows. Yeah, maybe I should rebrand the conversations. But look, guys, this has been awesome.
And the iced tea as well.
People think it's Scotch, man. They still think it's Scotch. If we had
I thought it was Scotch.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, look, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. That's what we're going for. People probably think we're heavyweights because of that. No, we are, but we're not alcoholics. If I had that much Scotch, respect. But no, I hope I don't sound like a rambling drunk. But but look, guys, this has been a real pleasure, and just like the people on here, I think they enjoyed it, and I look forward to the next one. Maybe we could do one after the election, dissecting what this means for the world and how devastating either side is.
Yeah, that would be really fun, actually.
Let me know.
Let's keep that in mind.
Let me know,
guys. Thank you for listening. Shout out to the live stream listeners right now as well. Welcome to the Culture Cafe, and shout out to Joel for coming on. It's been awesome. We'll see you in the next episode, which will be up next week. And stay tuned. We've got Eat the Street coming this week. We're back in action. Restaurants are open again in Victoria, and we cannot wait to get out there and start dining in and giving you guys the reviews of the food around Melbourne.
Not to mention a collab with That's Where We're At podcast next week.
Stay excited.
Another collab coming around the corner. All right. Well, thanks heaps for joining us, guys. This is Curtis signing out.
Awesome. See you, fellas.
Catch you guys. Thanks again.
Boom.